Hey, Coordination. I've got a really fun episode for you, and I think a pretty meaningful episode too, with Auryn Macmillan, the founder of clr.fund, who also works on Gnosis Guild. In this episode, we talk about clr.fund and Gitcoin. We are both quadratic funding protocols that are designed to help fund the public good in the Ethereum ecosystem. Quadratic funding is a mechanism that allows for the optimal funding of an ecosystem. And I think that what's really interesting is that Auryn and I are both working on different flavors of quadratic funding. And we use that as a launch pad in this episode to talk about practical pluralism, the philosophy of client diversity, the philosophy of aiming for anti-fragility and capture resistance for your ecosystem. We've been really inspired by the work that Superfizz and the Prismatic Labs team and the Lighthouse team have done at creating client diversity at the base layer of the Ethereum network. And in this episode, Auryn and I talk about what would it look like if we took that philosophy and we scaled it to other parts of the ecosystem in public goods and quadratic funding, where Auryn and I are working, but also what if we embraced practical pluralism in the NFT, DeFi, and DAO tooling ecosystems? What kind of beautiful things could we create with modularity and well-documented interfaces and forkable code? This episode is all about practical pluralism. We've got the theory in the pluralism, and we've got the actual practicalness in the practical part of the episode. And I think this is going to go down as one of my favorite Green Pill episodes, I think. So, Coordination, I think you're really going to enjoy this episode with Auryn Macmillan, the founder of clr.fund. Without further ado, I give you Auryn Macmillan.
If you're trying to grow and preserve your crypto wealth, optimizing your taxes is just as lucrative as trying to find the next hidden gem. ALTO IRA can help you invest in crypto in tax-advantaged ways to help you preserve your hard-earned money. ALTO Crypto IRA lets you invest in more than 150 coins and tokens with all the same tax advantages of an IRA. They make it easy to fund your alternative IRA or crypto IRA via your 401k or by contributing directly from your bank account. There is no setup or account fees, and it's all you need to do to invest in crypto tax-free. Let me repeat that again. You can invest in crypto tax-free. Diversify like the pros and trade without tax headaches. Open an ALTO Crypto IRA to invest in crypto tax-free. Just go to altoira.com/bankless. That's ALTOIRA.com/bankless and start investing in crypto today. When you shop for plane tickets, you probably use Kayak, Expedia, or Google to compare ticket prices. So why would you limit yourself to just one exchange when you trade crypto? When you make your trades, you want to make sure you're getting the best possible price on your trade, and that's why you should be using MATCHA. MATCHA has smart order routing that splits your trade across all the various liquidity sources in Ethereum, and is also operational on Polygon, Avalanche, Binance Smart Chain, and other chains. Trading on MATCHA is super easy because it pools the liquidity for me in a single, easy-to-use platform and allows me to make limit on-chain orders, so you can set and forget your DeFi trades, and they will go through automatically while you're away. So when you're making a trade, head over to matcha.xyz/bankless and connect your wallet to start getting the best prices and most liquidity when you trade your crypto assets.
What's up, Auryn? How you doing?
Good, mate. Doing really well. How about you?
Pretty good. I think that you and I are in opposite parts of the world right now. I'm over here in Colorado. You're in Australia. I'm having coffee. It's nighttime behind you.
Right. Yeah, it's I don't know, 20 past 11 now, and I think 7 a.m. for you. So yeah, it's we're opposite ends of the spectrum right now.
Yeah. Well, I think we're in opposite ends of the spectrum. But here's my segue. We're in similar parts of the Ethereum ecosystem. So, tell me about what you're working on.
Yeah, a whole bunch of different stuff, but I guess maybe relevant to the conversation today. My primary focus for the last year and a half has been on Zodiac, which is this kind of composable DAO tooling standard, and then a whole bunch of tools kind of built to that standard. And it's really intended just to make all of the existing DAO tools play nicely. It's a way of kind of enabling much more flexible and kind of future proof organizations that can grow and adapt to whatever their environment looks like in the future. And then kind of on the side as a passion project for the last couple of years, I've been working on clr.fund, which is a quadratic funding protocol built on MACI, the minimal anti-collusion infrastructure, which is this really neat framework for collusion-resistant voting, quadratic funding, built using zero-knowledge proofs.
Very cool. Deeply respect both projects that you're working on, and I want to talk about the Gnosis stuff. But actually, the reason that we're having you on GreenPill today is because of ClearFund being a quadratic funding protocol. And for listeners who are skilled at reading between the lines, Gitcoin also has a flagship product, Gitcoin Grants, that is a quadratic funding protocol. And one of the things that I think that you and I are really excited to talk about is to drill in on this shared value that we've discovered that we have over the last several years. You and I have had this friendship, and it's kind of blossomed into ClearFund and Gitcoin both being quadratic funding protocols, and we've discovered that we have this shared value of practical pluralism. So, you and I have written an essay about practical pluralism that we're going to be releasing. It's going to be in the show notes if people want to check it out, and would love for us to like go through that essay together and to sort of talk about why that's a shared value and what it means for us to be working on something bigger than each of our projects together. So I don't know anything to say about that before we dive into the essay or.
Yeah, I mean, I love the way that you frame it. We obviously have been kind of working in and around the same kind of things for the last couple of years, and both kind of have this deep respect for and understanding of the value of pluralism, of kind of diversity in ecosystems like Web3, and the value that can bring across a whole bunch of different aspects of the ecosystem. But I mean, maybe we just dive into reading through the essay rather than kind of beating around the bush on it, or kind of musing on it beforehand.
Yeah, totally. Do you want to do the honors?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. So yeah, the essay is titled "Practical Pluralism." I'll just dive right in. The Ethereum network is secured by block producers, currently miners, soon to be replaced by validators. They're the foundation of consensus in the Ethereum network, upon which there are trillions of dollars of assets and untold and untapped potential for human coordination. Having well designed, secure, and dependable block producers to protect this value is a great strategy to defend the network. And one of the key strengths employed by the Ethereum community to ensure secure and reliable block production is client diversity. This means more than one implementation of the specification. They can be differentiated by language, architecture, features, or which part of the network they specialize in. So if a single client were used by two-thirds, 66% of validators, and it experienced a serious bug, there's this very real risk that this could lead to chain instability for users and monetary loss for node operators. By treating client diversity as a public good and fostering an environment where many independent client teams are incentivized to implement the Ethereum protocol in disparate code bases, the Ethereum community bakes in a measure of anti-fragility and resilience against bugs in any one implementation. So client diversity is pluralism in practice. Pluralism is the understanding that diversity of people, beliefs, opinions, mechanisms, approaches, implementations, etc., within a given context generally results in better outcomes than in the absence of such diversity. Nowhere is this more evident than in ecosystems with rich biodiversity, ecosystems where radically different flora and fauna work in a harmoniously competitive act of mutual regulation and perpetuation. This can be seen in how the success of one species feeds and is kept in check by the success of another species, and so on. So pluralism itself is a primitive for anti-fragility, resilience, and regenerative systems. As an ecosystem, Ethereum has done a great job of fostering diversity in its mining and validating clients. But similarly, we should insist on pluralism across the full stack of Web3 technologies and culture. So this includes discrete products like RPC nodes, DAO tooling, public goods funding mechanisms like Gitcoin grants and ClearFund, automatic market makers, stable coins, developer tooling, as well as the intangibles that influence intangible influencers like the people, groups, communities, and opinions which we participate in, and which hold sway over our ecosystem. So we're writing this essay because we believe in client diversity. We believe in pluralism as a primitive, and we want you to join us in extending the ethos of client diversity and pluralism to other layers of the stack. By having pluralism as a core value of each vertical, we make it more likely that the space tends towards capture resistance, not fragility. Participants should be able to choose to use or not to use any one of a number of options for any given need. By having pluralism at the beating heart of each niche, we ensure that space is anti-fragile. If there is a major bug discovered in one system, the resulting cascading harm can only go so far because there'll always be another DApp ready to pick up the slack. For Web3 to truly express itself, diversity and pluralism must be core values. So to all those who seek to build and enshrine and defend moats in this shared virtual machine, to build systems incapable of composition, incapable of componentization, incapable of being permissionlessly replaced by some alternative, we say this is a pattern of the past. It's an anti-pattern in Web3, and it's a pattern enabled by permissioned access to and control of data. This pattern will be made redundant in our version of the internet, made redundant by our shared virtual machine. And the future will be dominated by much more emergent systems, organic compositions of many discrete and interchangeable components built by disparate people in combinations never dreamt of by their creators. And it's through this diversity that we build anti-fragility and a resilience to capture, censorship, and stagnation. We challenge the protocols at the center of the NFT, DeFi, and DAO tooling ecosystems to adopt practical pluralism as part of their design philosophy and their broader ethos.
Beautiful. I think you have a future as a voice actor also, Auryn. I was realizing as you read that. So this was an essay that you and I wrote together, and we wanted to send a signal by having you on the GreenPilled podcast and talking about practical pluralism together. That signal is that at an intellectual level, we believe in client diversity and pluralism that creates anti-fragility, it creates capture resistance, it creates a right to exit at each of these layers of the stack. I think that for me, writing this essay, I was very inspired by Superfizz and the Prismatic Labs in Lighthouse and other client teams. Just the fact that they're all working on clients that is going to secure this multi-billion-dollar network, and none of them is competing for client share. They're actually trying to create an ecosystem in which the entire network can thrive. And they know that by having a tactical retreat on trying to have too much of the network, they actually create a strategic asset in the diversity and the capture resistance and the anti-fragility of the network. So at the client layer, if there's a bug in, say, Prismatic or in Lighthouse, then the network can still continue because the system is not captured by one client. And our challenge is to extend that from the client layer of the Ethereum network to the NFT ecosystem, to the DeFi ecosystem, to the DAO tooling ecosystem, and then also to public goods. So, I think that public goods is really important to do that for, because we don't want to have one tool. Like, if we're going to build this civilizational scale infrastructure for funding public goods, there's not going to be just one mechanism that can solve for that, but also you wouldn't want to have just one implementation of that mechanism solve for that. What you actually want is have this rich diversity of pluralistic mechanisms and pluralistic projects that are supporting that stack. And I think that there's no clearer expression of that than I think our friendship over the last several years, in which you're running ClearFund and I'm running Gitcoin grants. Although now that we're a DAO, I'm not really running much Gitcoin grants anymore. But those are the major takeaways for me from the essay. I'm curious kind of where your head is at after reading through that essay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, kind of the way that Gitcoin grants and ClearFund have had this, I don't know, interesting and very kind of mutually beneficial relationship over the past few years has been fantastic, and I think is really, really great practical example of pluralism in practice, and of two ecosystems really trying to foster that kind of two products in the same kind of niche, or two communities in the same kind of niche, trying to foster that type of pluralism, and being kind of really supportive of that kind of pluralism. I guess, like, for backstory there, um, for anyone that's not aware of it, ClearFund has been a recipient in Gitcoin grants, I think, since the second or third round. So it's been receiving funding from that. The funding from that has been almost exclusively used to back a bunch of the early funding rounds that ClearFund ended up running. Essentially, was used as matching funds for those rounds. Which was incredible, because it was essentially one quadratic funding round supporting another quadratic funding round that was running on some really, super experimental software at the time. I mean, it's still very early days, but like in Gitcoin grants round, I think round 2 or 3 was when ClearFund first got in. It was.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I was just gonna interject. Like, can we say that was the first quadratic funding? Like quadratic on quadratic?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and then the Gitcoin DAO ended up giving a grant to ClearFund to kind of continue this effort, continue this research, and so that grant from Gitcoin DAO is funding the current development, or part of the current development on ClearFund, and then in turn ClearFund is now working with Gitcoin to spin up a kind of sister round, or a kind of trial round, using ClearFund Stack to go along with one of the future Gitcoin grants rounds. And so, yeah, it has this really, great cooperative relationship between these two communities and two sets of products that, in the traditional world, and in a world where you're not kind of embracing this pluralism, and kind of understanding the benefit that it has for the larger ecosystem. Um, yeah, we have kind of developed this fantastic cooperative relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, plus one. And I've just got to say that, like, through the years, I think that even as ClearFund launched, you came up to me at ETH Denver and you're like, "Hey, we launched this thing. Like, just wanted to let you know about it." And we've just kind of like continued this conversation about where our values align, and also where our values differ, and the diversity of that makes up a stronger ecosystem. And yeah, plus one to all the different ways the projects have interacted in the past. I think the ways that they differ is that Gitcoin, I foolishly built as centralized back in 2017 and 2018, and that allowed us to iterate faster on creating a Web 2 style user experience. I call it, like, Gitcoin, the original platform, as like Web 2.5, in that it's crypto enabled, but it's hosted at a data center in Oregon on AWS. And ClearFund from the beginning has been very maximal decentralization, or at least much more on the decentralization spectrum than Gitcoin. And then has also used a different mechanism for preventing collusion. Gitcoin uses pairwise bonding, which is an idea from Vitalik, and ClearFund is using Macy, which is an idea from Vitalik also. We're all just Vitalik's brainchildren, I guess. But and the
Right.
other thing I'll say about Macy is that it creates much stronger privacy guarantees about what you're funding, which could be important in a lunar punk future in which we're funding public goods, but we don't want other people to say who's been funding public goods. But the one thing I will say is that as Gitcoin decentralizes and we're working on Gitcoin grants 2.0, y'all have kind of proven that it's possible to do in a much more decentralized, permissionless, modular way, and that's been an inspiration for us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think we've talked about this for years now already, but for the benefit of everyone else, I think, like, essentially Gitcoin and ClearFund just attack the same problem from opposite ends of the spectrum. Like, Gitcoin was very focused on getting something into production so that it could be iterated on quickly, and focused on solving the user experience of it, like figuring out how you put a quadratic funding round into production, and like what all of those interactions look like. And so ClearFund was able to leverage a bunch of those learnings when we were thinking about how we think about what the user interface should look like. A lot of the interactions that people would expect when they're participating in a round like that. And because we had the advantage of being able to kind of leverage those learnings, we're really able to focus on the other end of it, where we say, okay, what are the things that we can put in place to uh, maximally, focus on collusion resistance and like maximally decentralize this. Like build a software stack here where someone could potentially take this, have it be owned, make a deployment of it that's owned entirely by a DAO, and have this thing exist as a illegal cross jurisdictional kind of totally autonomous quadratic funding round. We haven't gotten to that stage yet, as in terms of actually deploying that kind of instance of it. But I think the stack is now at a point where it could be, which is really really cool. But again, like we were able to do that because I think a lot of the there was a lot of preliminary work done by Gitcoin in terms of all of the user experience type stuff. We used that as inspiration and then modified it in a lot of places where we didn't have access to the same kind of data and stuff like that. And then obviously we also benefited incredibly from all of the work that the Ethereum Foundation had put into Macy, the minimal anti-collusion infrastructure.
Yeah, totally. And by the way, I gotta say that Macy is so inspiring for me. I'm getting a little bit of FOMO not being able to work on Macy's stuff, but it's on the roadmap over the horizon for Grants 2.0. So looking forward to benefiting from your work
Yeah.
if and when we get there. Um, I guess I would love to turn the conversation towards what the listener can learn. Like, say you're working at an NFT project or at a DeFi, like you're a founder of a DeFi project. What are some practical tips if you want to embrace practical pluralism? Like, obviously, you can read the essay and tweet about it. One of the things that like reverse engineering my and your experience that I think has matters is having that like social interop from the start. Like you and I have just like kind of been friends before back before Gitcoin had Gitcoin grants and back before you were working on clr.fund. So I think that social interop at the base layer is important before you have technology interop or like a philosophical or economic interop. Um, and I don't know, like does client diversity, like does pluralism scale out of the most hippy dippy niches? Like, public goods is kind of this like really infinite horizon that we're all shooting towards. Does this philosophy of practical pluralism, can it be implemented outside of public goods, and uh,
Oh yeah,
outside of client
absolutely.
diversity? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like it really is a net benefit anywhere where anti-fragility is a benefit, right? Like anywhere that uh, you you get a benefit from having a fallover system if the system that you're using packs up or is no longer available. Like so. I mean, a really great example of it in like the DAO tooling space is the front ends for Compound framework, Compound Governor or Open Zeppelin Governor. There's three kind of well-known implementations of it. There's the Compound implementation of it. There's Sybil.org and there's Tally. And so, like by having those three things all expressing essentially the same DAOs, if one doesn't expose a function that you want, or one of them goes down because their web hosting fell over, or one of them is using I don't know, using a CDN that's blocking your IP address or whatever it is, then you can go and interact with the same DAO from another framework. And I mean, like beyond that, there's a whole bunch of other DAO tools that are exposing again those same sets of DAOs in different ways, exposing the same sets of DAOs, but potentially different interactions or different data points from those DAOs. So you have things like Deep DAO and Boardroom and stuff like that are exposing more kind of analytic style data on those same sets of DAOs. And so I think like that kind of client diversity makes the whole ecosystem much stronger. And that's true of DAO tooling. That's true of DeFi tools. That's true of just about everything in Web3.
Yeah, The compound example is great. Gitcoin DAO actually uses compound style governance, and it was great to just be able to plug in our governance to all these different frameworks when it launched. I'm actually realizing that Gitcoin, when we first launched, had a bounty product, and we were built off of standard bounties, which was built by my friends Will Villanueva, Mark Balin, and Simona Pop, who launched standard bounties. And one of the things that happened in that relationship was that we actually iterated away from standard bounties because we didn't have some functionality that we wanted, and therefore we just kind of abandoned standard bounties and went our own way. And recording this episode on practical pluralism now, realizing that we deviated away from that pluralism with the bounty standard, I think the lesson for me is that you can have practical pluralism once the specification is fixed and you've kind of reached product market fit a little bit more. So in terms of like the practical part of practical pluralism, my lesson from that standard bounties experience was that it can sort of be done once a protocol or an interface is relatively mature, and then the coordination costs of staying on top of that standard is much less. So
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, standard bounties was interesting, but I think like as with a lot of uh, a lot of things that were made, I don't know, between 2015 and 2000, I don't know, 19, they just didn't factor in, the outrageous gas spikes that we started seeing 2019 through now, and so yeah, like the UX that those kind of things introduce just made a lot of projects kind of not viable on mainnet, and I think standard bounties is one of the things that really suffered from.
totally, yeah. But still I have that lesson there of like we had the social interop between the Gitcoin and the bounties teams, and then like the Gitcoin and the clr.fund teams, and then we're kind of like building technical and economic interop on top of that. I think it's like it's just interesting to sort of like map out our values and to try to figure out exactly what we're trying to build together. What is the world we're trying to build together when we're embracing this practical pluralism? I don't know. Are there any other examples that come to mind for you, or any sort of takeaways about how to shoot for this goal together?
Yeah, I mean, I think a huge part of it. So you talked about standards kind of crystallizing a little bit and that making it much easier. But even prior to that happen, I think a big part of it is just building in a way that enables other people to go and build essentially the alternate to what you're building, or the alternate interface to what you're building. If you're writing smart contracts, then writing them in such a way that someone else could uh, could write a contract that exposes the same interface and then plug it into the other tools that you've built. Or conversely, if you're writing a smart contract, then writing it in such a way that someone else could go and replace your interface for it, as in like your UI
So
or app for it.
modularity, I think, is what I heard there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Modularity, composability. I mean, obviously, I'm really biased on this because of Zodiac, and this is kind of the message I've been trying to drill into people's head for the last, I don't know, 6 months, 8 months, something like that. But yeah, this idea of kind of modularity and composability, what particularly kind of composability is I think one of the great value propositions of Web3 is this ability to uh, essentially have this shared execution environment where we can all kind of build on top of the things that other people have built. We can kind of leverage, I mean, yeah, leveraging the existing kind of deployed systems, build on top of them to create these kind of really emergent systems that are kind of well beyond what the original deployer kind of intended them to be used for, or kind of how they imagine them being used. Um, you get kind of much more emergent ecosystems of applications with this kind of small modular composable type systems, as opposed to large monolithic systems. So yeah, I think like practically then, like for someone who's building something, building it in such a way where it's friendly with that, like leveraging existing tools, but also exposing interfaces that other people can interact with, making your stuff open source, like putting your interfaces up, making them open source so other people can fork them and change them and modify them, and host an alternate if yours goes down, or run it locally, or anything like this.
So, you've got some money, but how are you going to use it? You want to spend.
You, me, shopping now, bro.
When you know you should be saving.
You'll never buy a house at this rate.
But what if you could spend and save at the same time? For the enlightened kind, with inquiring minds, a new world awaits. Set yourself free with completely flexible, self-repaying loan technology. Supported on desktop and mobile, seize the power of ALCHEMIX, allowing you to spend and save at the same time. Leverage your wealth without risk of liquidation. Take out a loan that repays itself. By using yield from your deposit to pay off your balance, your only debt is time. What was once inconceivable is now within your grasp.
You're winning some.
OPOLIS is a member-owned digital employment cooperative offering payroll, health insurance, and membership perks that go beyond the basics that you would find at your normal 9-to-5. OPOLIS offers not only health benefits, but also pay stubs and W-2s, workers' comp, and unemployment insurance, as well as disability benefits for independent DAO workers that are traditionally reserved for regular employment situations. OPOLIS provides a tax-compliant way to get your paycheck in crypto and professionalize your work-life situation. OPOLIS members enjoy an average of 20 to 50% savings on top-rated national group health insurances, as well as self-sovereign portable employment. You can also get tokenized rewards based on consumption, staking, and referrals, and also the ability to fund payroll in fiat and stablecoins without the use of centralized exchange. You can also receive paychecks in fiat and whitelisted digital currencies. So sign up for OPOLIS today and get 1,000 work and 1,000 bank tokens when you become a member of OPOLIS by May 25th, 2022, and get started working your self-sovereign life.
So it seems like, one of the mistakes I think that we made in early in Gitcoin was A, building it centralized, but B, building it in this monolith that didn't have well documented interfaces. And I think that I think that we're aiming to be more modular in Grants 2.0 when that launches. And I think that what will be neat about that is that it'll enable interop between different components of the clr.fund or the Gitcoin system. And this is all very high level and hand wavy right now, but I know we've talked about, an interaction between the two registries as one of the first modules that we're going to have that interact with each other. So going from that social interop to the technology interop, is a step I see.
And just for listeners there, what we're talking about there is this kind of universal grants registry. We can have one registry that anyone who wants to be a recipient of grants kind of just across the board, or at least like Web3 grants, can kind of create one profile on that registry, and it be shared across a whole bunch of different platforms. A whole bunch of different grants.
Yeah, I'm actually of the mind that there will never be one registry because we have this L2 ecosystem, and I think that just having like multiple registries from which you can pub sub from them, we'll never be able to bless one as the canonical registry because that's not how the Ethereum ecosystem works. I'd be curious for your take on that.
Yeah, so I guess it depends on what you're considering one. So like, I guess when I'm thinking about this registry, like acknowledging that there's going to be this huge ecosystem of different networks. I don't know, maybe this is getting too in the weeds, but I've been envisioning essentially having this kind of registry contract deployed anywhere the EVM exists, and then probably consuming that with something like a subgraph and using the graph's upcoming subgraph composition feature to merge all of that into one master subgraph. So it doesn't really matter what network you add your registry item on, it should all end up in this one kind of master registry.
Right. That's interesting. But yeah, these are the kind of conversations that you can have when you have social interop for your project. You start planning for the technology interop of the platforms. And I think that the end result, if we're successful, and by the way, there's no guarantee we'll be successful, it would be that a person who's running a grant can put it in this registry, and then any other project that's embracing this practical pluralism in the Ethereum ecosystem can pull those grants in, which hopefully creates more funding for more public goods in the future. So in the end, the citizens, I'm going to call them citizens, not consumers or users. The citizens of the Ethereum ecosystem are the ones who stand to benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have to assume that you've been reading Vitalik and Glenn, and I can't remember the third author's name.
Zoe.
The Soulbound tokens.
Oh,
Was
yeah,
it Zoe? No,
Zoe wrote the original QF paper. I believe it was it was Pooja, who is the third author on their Soulbound tokens.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, and this all sounds like there's a whole bunch of alignment, I think, between what they're suggesting and this kind of idea of pluralism as well. I mean, like they obviously talk about pluralism a bunch in there, but this is they're talking about it mostly, I think, on the social layer as opposed to the kind of technical layer, which is what you've been hinting at as the kind of precursor, that's the necessary precondition for the kind of more technical layer to actually emerge.
Right. And we'll include in the show notes a link to Glenn and Vitalik's paper, which is probably worth its own episode. It's entitled Decentralized Society, and it's in the show notes if anyone wants to check it out. Let's see.
Yeah,
I think we only have 5 minutes left. So where should we end? I guess the call to action for the listeners is check out the essay. If you believe in practical pluralism, please tweet about it. We want to expand on the work that Superfizz and the client diversity advocates in the ecosystem have done, and extend that to different layers of the stack. This ideal of practical pluralism to different layers of the stack. So that's my call to action. What do you think? Where's your head at?
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo that. Just shout about it, but then also, I don't know, be about it. Like also, if you're building, if you're designing something, then take this to heart. This is the practical side of it. It means actually using it in practice. So like if you're designing something, if you're building something, include this as one of your design goals, as one of the things that you want to build for. You want to build to enable this kind of pluralism at whatever part of the stack you're building. Think about how you can essentially make your tool one of many that might be performing the same function. How you might make it replaceable, how you might make it interoperate with other competing tools, how you might make it, make it so that others can build tools on top of yours, or alternate interfaces on top of yours, or anything like that to again move from pluralism to actual practical implementations of pluralism.
Right. Totally. So modularity, well-documented interfaces, being involved in the social layer of the ecosystem that you're building, and also recognizing that cooperation is a competitive advantage. In Web3, I think this is something that people who are coming in from Web2 need to grok, is that we're competing to we're coordinating a lot more in this ecosystem because of the modularity and the shared EVM. Whereas in the old ecosystem, it's all about building moats and edging your competitors out. So I think that shift in mindset is super important for those of us who are coming from Web 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, if you and I are on exact opposite ends of the world in exact opposite time zones, and we can do this, then I think other people in the ecosystem can do this as well. So great to have you on GreenPill. I'm so looking forward to the world that we're trying to create, which is more public goods and more funding for the commons for everyone. Thank you for being on the podcast. Where can people find you online? Where can people find your work?
On Twitter at Auryn_Macmillan is probably the easiest way to find me. At Gnosis Guild is the organization that I'm mostly focused on at the moment, or at least like that's consuming most of my time. And then at clr.fund is the quadratic funding protocol that we've been talking about a bunch here. So yeah, any and all of those, feel free to reach out. Always happy to chat with folks. And Kevin, thanks for having me on the show. It's always fun chatting with you.
Thanks for being on. I'll see you later.